It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. You can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. And you can email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. I'm really excited about our guest today. You know him as the QAnon Shaman. His real name is Jake Angeli. He's got a website called ForbiddenTruthAcademy.com. Now, you can find him on Twitter at America Shaman on Twitter. He's written a couple of books, One Mind at a Time, A Deep State of Illusion, and Will and Power Inside the Living Library. Living Library. My own handwriting is so terrible, man. But Jake Angeli, man, tell us about yourself. Who is Jake Angeli?
Well, I'm definitely not the straw man that the media has made me out to be. That's for sure. The media used my face, my name, my image to create a shock and awe campaign, and then used that shock and awe campaign to smear me, to smear the people that were there on January 6th, to smear Trump supporters. So what's funny about that, though, is that if they would have done their homework, if they would have done their due diligence, they would understand how big of a mistake that actually was, because I'm nothing like what the caricature that they tried to make me out to be. They tried to make me out to be some, idiot, some lunatic fringe, extremist, and nothing could be further from the truth. I'm not a white supremacist. I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not terrorist or a extremist of any sort. I'm actually centrist. I'm a libertarian. I'm a constitutional. I'm a believer in the Constitution. I believe in the constitutional republic. I believe in the vision that our founders had for our country, and I think that there's a very clearly nefarious force at this point that is working in the opposite direction that our founders were working in so long ago, trying to create a one world government, a new world order. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing my best to be the antithesis of that.
But then let me ask you this, because you say that they mischaracterized you, but you're the one that showed up there in that outfit. You know what I mean? Let's start with this. Who were you before January 6th? I know you were some kind of an activist in Arizona, right? So what was your life back before January 6th?
Well, I'm a spiritual activist, not a political one. I believe that our socioeconomic and geopolitical systems are so corrupt and distorted because our spiritual perspective, our spiritual institutions have become so corrupt and distorted. And so our socioeconomic and geopolitical systems are a reflection of that spiritual distortion and corruption. Now, in Arizona, I was, yes, a spiritual activist, going down to my local capitals, going down to my local media buildings, going down to the local power company when they were ripping people off, and protesting, doing my shamanic thing, bringing my drums, singing my song down at the ley lines at the Capitol, outside of the media building here in downtown Phoenix, outside of APS, the power company. One time I did that. Anyway, but for my day job, I was working in group homes with teen boys. So I did that for 6.5 years, because working with children, helping kids, basically saving and helping the next generation is what I'm all about, man.
Now, when you were doing this activity back in Arizona, because one of the names you use is Lone Wolf, were you like a lone wolf? Were you part of a group?
Well, that was the pen name that I used for the book Will and Power, Inside the Living Library, and there's a reason for that. And you'll find that out because it's a part of a book series that I have the second book for that series written. I just haven't had it edited yet, and I haven't published it yet. But the name I was using on my YouTube channel was Yellowstone Wolf.
Right.
Now, Are you familiar with what's called a trophic cascade and the effects of the wolves in Yellowstone?
Absolutely not. I'm from the Bronx.
Oh, okay. Okay. So check this out, and then we'll kind of bring this back to spiritual activism and, the outfit, the regalia.
Yeah.
So in Yellowstone National Park, as the frontier began to expand and people started moving west and they started developing cattle ranches and stuff like that, wolves began to be a problem when these ranches were like bordering Yellowstone and stuff like that. So the government and the people decided that they were going to get rid of all the wolves in Yellowstone National Park. So there became this campaign to hunt them down and kill them. So for like 70 years or so, there was no wolves in Yellowstone National Park. And the effects on the ecosystem were catastrophic because there were no wolves in the ecosystem. The elk and the deer and stuff like that were coming out of the forest and into the canyons. They were eating all of the foliage. And this is the same foliage that like little critters like, mice or frogs or beavers or what have you would use to like hide from predators, whether they be coyotes or they be eagles or they be bears or what have you. And so, and also because the foliage was being consumed so rapidly, the roots weren't able to grow and develop and like interlock with one another and create stability in the root structure and in the soil composition in the ecosystem. So what ended up happening is that there was mass migrations out of Yellowstone National Park, or in some cases even mass extinctions, because the foliage was being consumed, the little critters were being eaten, the coyotes were hunting and replacing basically the wolves in that sense, but they were far more indiscriminate with their selection of who and what they ate and hunted. The foliage was not growing thick enough. So what would happen is that as rain would come, the river banks would collapse, and because the soil and the roots weren't very strong and tightly knit together, so the whole ecosystem began to collapse. And shortly thereafter, like I said, like 70 years later, the people finally realized, maybe there was something to these wolves being in the ecosystem. So the wolf is the apex predator in Yellowstone National Park. And when they allowed the wolves to go back into the ecosystem, within a few months, the whole ecosystem changed because the wolves chased out the elk and the deer out of the canyons and into the forests again. And then this allowed the foliage to grow. As the foliage began to grow, these other critters, these smaller critters, came back and they started to do their thing. The beaver would build dams. The dams would end up creating smaller pools of water that little minnows or frogs or mice or what have you would end up occupying. So in this sense, the beavers being there changed the courses of the rivers. And also what changed the courses of the rivers is the plants and the foliage was allowed to grow. The roots were able to interconnect with each other. And the soil composition was much, much stronger, so that when it did rain, then the riverbanks wouldn't collapse. So the riverbanks became more narrow in their channels. More water was able to directly flow in a specific path. The beavers built their dams. Little pools of water began to form. Then, the eagles started coming back. The bears became more prevalent in the ecosystem. The wolves would also kill the coyotes, as opposed to the coyotes eating all these lower life forms, all these smaller creatures. The wolves would kill the coyotes.
Okay, but Jake, without eating up all the time of the whole show, what's the...
Well, I know, I'm getting there. Getting there. So the point is this. The wolves being at the top of the food chain is what created what is called this trophic cascade, where the apex predator being at the top of the food chain ends up affecting the ecosystem and allowing it to function properly. So I call myself Yellowstone. Well, I got the name Yellowstone Wolf because in the spiritual ecosystem, in the ether, I'm the apex predator.
Gotcha. And back to Arizona, though, were you acting alone or with a group?
Oh, no, I was I'm never alone. God and the angels are with me always. So I was going with God and the angels everywhere I went. but nobody could see them. It looked like it was just me.
and you used to show up like at Black Lives Matter protests and school board things too as well?
Yeah, I showed up to Black Lives Matter and Antifa protests as a counter-protester marching with the police. I tried to red pill those people, but they were totally not interested whatsoever. So after a while, I decided that as long as they're not attacking police officers and destroying property like they were in Portland and Minneapolis and stuff like that, then I have no reason to be there to try to stop those things from happening. As long as they're not attacking police officers, I have no reason to be there to stop that from happening. So, yeah, and I went to other things, other rallies and stuff, Trump rallies. I went to walk-away rallies. Pretty much every rally in 2020 that was in Arizona, pretty much all of them I went to.
And this was always, you showed up in that outfit with the bison horns?
Yeah, my regalia. Yeah, my regalia, yeah. So the whole thing is, behind the shamanic regalia, is it all has symbolism, okay? So the symbolism is that in the Dene, or Navajo, we call them Navajo, they call themselves Dene. In the Dene tradition, the coyote is like the trickster or like the deceiver. And so I have the trickster by the tails. It's coyote tails and coyote fur. So I have the trickster by the tails. And I'm wearing the trickster skin because if the trickster messes with the buffalo, they get the horns. You see? So you can't pull the wool over my eyes.
Gotcha.
It's just not going to happen.
And then what about the spear, though? And it would say Q sent me, right? Well, you were an advocate of the QAnon drops?
Well, the staff that I was carrying around was not intended in any way, shape, or form to be a weapon. It was not really a spear as much as it was a staff. Okay. Now, yeah, I had a sign that said Q sent me. On the other side, it said, "Hold the line, Patriots, God wins." And the Q drops, I think, are a evolution in our collective consciousness because of the way that they affected the mind and the psychology of our country and the world. It basically circumvented the Operation Mockingbird media and gave the counter narrative to the divisive narrative that was pushed by the media, the Mockingbird media. It exposed the debt-based fiat currency. It exposed child and human trafficking, and it exposed the way that blackmail is used to create centralized control in our government, kind of like with what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. So in my opinion, the Q operation was largely a success in that sense.
And you still have positive feelings about the Q operation?
Well, yeah. I mean,
and you think it was authentic? You think it was really?
Picture.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you think it was authentic? You think it was a real insider with the top-level security clearance who was dropping these hints?
I think it was a bunch. I think it was a group of people. But yes, I believe it was people at the highest levels of military intelligence in the intelligence community disseminating above top secret information to patriots in our republic so that we could take back our country from communists, globalists, fascists who have infiltrated our government at some of the highest and lowest levels so that they could bring the United States down from within. They knew that they could not, take us down with standing armies, so they had to infiltrate the system and bring it down from within. And so Q was an operation designed to expose all of that and shift the collective consciousness of the nation.
Gotcha. Now, and you described your outfit in very elaborate terms. It was almost like a cultish kind of a metaphysical type, giving you some kind of a... You had a whole thing going on there, right? You had there was a reason for every shred of outfit on you there, right? Now, I was told when you first showed up on the scene that some of your tattoos were like Norse or Nordic type tattoos. Can you describe that to me?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with all of my tattoos are shamanic in nature. They're all earned tattoos, kind of like how military members wear ribbons on their chest to commemorate or to symbolize the accomplishments that they have made. I have tattoos. In shamanic cultures, tattoos are worn to commemorate or to display the things that have either been overcome or accomplished on behalf of the individual. All of my tattoos have symbolism. They're all earned tattoos. The Nordic tattoos, I have Mjolnir, Hammer of Thor, as on my lower abdomen. I have Yggdrasil, the world tree or the tree of life over my heart because I'm here to defend all life on this planet. I'm here to defend all realms of life. And the one above that is called the Valk knot or Odin's knot. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not what Odin's knot means. Some people think it means heaven and hell.